Hello, I'm Dr. Arlen Four, the founder and chairman of Activator Methods International, and welcome to Activate Your Practice. Today, we are honored to have a celebrity in our office here, Dr. Monte Hessler, who is the team chiropractor for the Phoenix Suns. And I've known Monte for a long time, and I asked him one day, you have been the chiropractor for the Phoenix Suns, which is a big thing, but it doesn't seem like anybody ever recognizes you. So I told him, Monte, I want you to come in and tell us about your 24 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
24 years of being with a major team or teams, because I found out something this morning that I didn't know. Monte is also the team chiropractor for the San Francisco Giants.
Correct.
And that's spring training here in Phoenix.
Correct.
And I saw this on it. Show them your finger there. That's just super for his World Series ring. And I thought, boy, that's cool.
More. I remember the day I got this. I was more than touched. It was a pretty amazing day.
Well, not many people have World Series rings.
That's true. True.
Now, I want to go back because, kids coming out of school today, they'd all love to be in your position with, that kind of a job. What steps did you take to become, involved with the professional sports?
For starters, something I want to say, I was in practice for 14 years before I ever made any major inroads into at least the professional sports world. But in that time frame, you have to do a lot of volunteering. There were AAU events and track and field events, and obviously marathons and 5Ks and all those kinds of things. But over that time frame, gained introductions and met other young and upcoming professionals in sports medicine. So from making some of those networking connections, one of the orthopedic docs that I met along the way, met him in 91 and come about 99, 2000, that his orthopedic group got the contract with the Suns. And then when the athletes wanted a chiropractor, and because of that relationship, he asked me to join the sports medicine team for the Suns. There's something else I wanted to mention. I mean, for someone that you could be early in practice and you can be in practice for a while if you don't have a sports medicine network. In other words, if you don't have what I like to see as an orthopedic group, practice group, imaging facility where you have a good relationship with the radiologist, and potentially a PT group to provide timely and quality care for your athletes. I mean, sometimes it requires you have an athlete come in, they might need some sort of cleanup of a joint or different injections. It's nice to have access to those services so you can make a timely referral and take good care of your athletes.
I also noticed that you've got a lot of credentials after your name, and I'm assuming those are sports certifications.
The main one I have is a CCSP, which is I got it through your alma mater, through Logan, which honestly I got that in 95, and I have a couple of thoughts on that. It was great education, has served me well. There's another certification out there called CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. I think that we talked a little bit earlier about doctors that cross borders, so to speak. In other words, this, in my opinion anyway, this certification kind of crosses borders. You have physical therapists, athletic trainers, other docs that have this CSCS that is, I think, more recognizable than just a specific chiropractic certification. Not to say that wasn't good, and I'm definitely in support of our profession, but just kind of cross some boundaries with that one.
So in other words, what you're saying is don't limit yourself to the chiropractic one.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Basically. And, another thought that comes up whenever I have it's usually a younger chiro that wants to get in the sports medicine world. Sometimes I mention that sports network to them, and they go, how do I develop that? And I give them a couple pointers, a couple clues. I mean, one thing you can do is practice you're interested in. Go and introduce yourself. Try to get maybe 5 minutes with one of the decision makers in the practice and offer some services. Offer to do a talk to their patients on a topic of their choice. Maybe they see a lot of younger athletes and they don't do baseline concussion testing. I'll offer to go in and do baseline concussion testing for some of their young athletes.
So it's almost a volunteering your services to start with.
At the beginning, you have to.
Yes.
And in my opinion, I don't see another way of doing it without volunteering initially.
But then it ends up with networking.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. If you're not, just like developing your practice. You're not going to develop your practice when you first open it, sitting behind your desk, right? You're going to get out there and get involved with other professionals.
Describe an interaction with these other people, or the PTs, the ATCs, and so forth. What kind of reaction? How does it work when you're treating an athlete?
That's a great question. The biggest things, a sports medicine team is almost like any athletic team. There's got to be harmony and communication and trust, and to recognize your strengths and stay in your lane, so to speak. And kind of a point that illustrates that is I've seen different sports medicine teams that you have a particular provider that wants to do everything, that wants to be the hero. They jump in there and they want to take care of everything. It just kind of messes up the whole chemistry of the team, and it just doesn't work. And I've seen chiros get a great opportunity with some pro teams, and they jump in there and get overzealous, and they try to do too much, and they kind of mess up their relationship. Matter of fact, I was the head trainer with the San Francisco Giants. This was a few years ago. He said, "Hey, when you talk to your colleagues, would you tell them that when we bring a chiro out here, all we want you guys to do is to adjust, to manipulate, whatever term we're going to use. As you go higher in that sports medicine world, all of us, orthopedic doc, the family practice doc, whoever, PT, chiro, our role becomes much more specific the higher we go up. And once again, it's kind of that recognizing your role and staying in your lane, and everything seems to work a lot better."
I've often wondered, when you go to a game in the evening, what are some of the steps that you do? I'm sure you don't just walk in and, I'm sure you have a protocol.
Well, these days there's a ton of security for starters, but each sport that I work with is a little different. For example, Phoenix Suns, primarily game day stuff. I get there about 2 hours before the game, and it's just athletes that want to be treated before they play. Because that's the baseball is a little different. Spring training is 3 mornings a week. That's just routine treatments for all the players. And then when I cover a game, that one's kind of similar. I go in for baseball, it's a little more, about 3 hours early. See most of the players beforehand. The interesting twist with baseball is, about 4th, 5th inning, some of the pitchers that are relievers, they might not want to get it treated till, further into the game before they go in. And I cover some stuff out on PGA Tour as well. And that one's a little bit more demanding because we are out there all day during the week of that tournament. So that one's, involves travel. And, it's a little different. Each have their own little
Quirks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For example, I guess I'd like to know some of the memorable experiences that you've had, like for, who are some of the name people that really got benefits in the Suns, for example?
Oh, gosh. Somebody, Shawn Marion had a great relationship with, Jason Kidd, Grant Hill. There have been people along the way that have just been, wonderful relationships. Some of the things that really meant a lot to me were whatever the sport was, you're dealing with an athlete, and they say, "Hey, after I get adjusted, I move better, I can focus better. I've had a baseball player say I can see the pitch better coming." All kinds of just stuff that, in my world, is really, and really remarkable stuff. Through PGA, there's been some remarkable travel. I've worked in South Korea, Japan, Morocco, plus multiple places in the United States. There have been some uncomfortable memories too. I've had some, and I'm not going to say a name on this one, but everybody would recognize the name. Some very high-end athletes, when you first meet them, they kind of don't trust you so much until you do some work on them. And I had one athlete say, he seemed pleasant enough, but when we walk into my treatment area, I'd never met the guy before. He's a high-end person. I know everybody should know his name. He said, "If you don't get my back to move, you're fired."
Oh,
It was my first interaction with him, so of course, needless to say, I got his back to move.
yes. Yes. How about Charles Barkley?
You know, he was before my time. I've met him here and there. I started with the Suns 99, 2000. Charles was done or went to Houston in 93, 94, somewhere in there. So I missed out on
The reason I asked that question is Charles lived about 3 houses down
Really?
from me in Phoenix when I first came here, and what a character. And
he is a
so,
character.
yeah, he was. And he was totally different in a neighborhood than he was out in public. He was just a different type of guy. Out of all the sports, then, what's the favorite to take care of?
Oh, goodness. That's tough to answer.
I know they're different.
They are different. They're all fun. Baseball players, I just seem to relate to them a little bit more. But then again, out on PGA Tour, the golfers, since you're there all week, and with them you'll see them morning, evening. Lots of times they'll take you out to dinner, that kind of thing. And there's just been some really great guys out on tour. So each one has its own interesting qualities that make them. They're all kind of fun.
How about injury-wise, which is the worst?
As far as most,
Probably the most difficult to treat. Is football worse than basketball, for example?
I've never had any. I've seen, obviously high school, college football players. I wish I worked with an NFL team. That one I've heard is that's a whole nother animal. In other words, chiropractors, NFL, they're, as far as I know, they're out there 5-6 hours early. It's like a workout. They're just, working on all these huge players. It's quite an endeavor. Plus, I think they have typically 2 weeks. I mean, during the season, a couple days a week with the teams.
How about baseball versus basketball?
That's kind of a toss-up. What's interesting about that one is because I call myself a tune-up guy. Most of my work is pre-game work. With baseball players, particularly pitchers, there's a lot of specific biomechanical changes you'll see due to the rotational forces on the lower back and the pelvis, and how that energy has to translate up through the upper body and into the shoulder so they can deliver that pitch. So you see some specific patterns that show up with baseball players. Same with golfers. All the rotational guys, you see these patterns that will develop. With basketball, since they're all over the place, moving, getting hit, inflection and extension, whatever the case might be, I haven't seen super common patterns with the basketball players.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there were patterns.
The only thing, there's really interesting patterns, and all the biomechanical research done on golf and baseball. If you ever want to go into that one, it's really interesting. The only thing I've ever seen in basketball players is repetitive. On their shooting side, they'll have that CT junction, trigger points in the upper trap, just from the and levator scapula, just from the elevation of that shoulder from taking their shot. That's the only pattern I've ever picked up in the basketball players.
So if you're a young student today, learning to get relationships seems to be one of the biggest things that they need to do, and they could probably start that in college.
They could. And as I said, developing your sports medicine network, that's a huge one. The other thing that gets overlooked sometimes is there's some like untapped potentials. In other words, in their area, they might have a high school, college, country club, tennis center, CrossFit gym, whatever, just areas where they can. I mean, if we're interested in working with athletes, it's rewarding at whatever level you're working. So there's some untapped potentials they could be looking for in their area.
What percentage is your practice not sports injuries today?
Over the years, it's become, that's most of what I do now. I do some other things. I do some insurance tech consulting work, which I can do remotely, which takes up actually the bulk of my time these days. But I see more athletes than I do regular patients. My time in the office is kind of limited these days.
That's what I was asking. As you grew and grew and grew, your time constraints must have also grown.
Good call. Yeah, it did change.
Yes. So in a nutshell, if I'm a student at one of the colleges today and I'm really interested in sports, get certified. Is that what you would say first?
That very helpful. That one opens some doors. And as I said, I always want to be supportive of our profession, but there's the CSCS, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. It kind of crosses borders, so to speak. So it's more recognizable, I think, in the sports world.
So that's a general one to have.
Yeah, a general one, and then just hard work, doing your networking, developing that sports network that I mentioned, looking for untapped potentials or untapped opportunities in your particular location. Once again, for me, an orthopedic doc that I met in 90 or 91, 8-9 years later, turned into a major, and the benefit to your practice, the inter-referrals between the offices, that one can be very helpful, obviously.
You're talking about the other doctors.
Yeah, I mean, a referral source between, let's say you have a relationship with a primary care group, an orthopedic group. I mean, the referrals that go back and forth.
Yes.
That brings up an interesting point. Is mechanical back pain for a lot of orthopedic people, they don't even want to deal with it. So, I mean, for them to be able to ship that off to someone that's our special or one of our specialties, that's can become a great relationship.
Yes. So what I'm hearing you say is it's possible to have a sports injury practice because you have one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that students today, are asking. Can I major in sports and have a sports injury practice, or am I going to have that as a sideline?
Well, on average, I would say it's going to be more of a sideline because it's just May will be 38 years for me in practice. It's just for 34 of it anyway, I was in the office more than doing any of these other things. And just to kind of cut to the bottom line, I mean, in the office to pay bills too. I mean, the sports things do pay you, but it's not like it. If you're in your office every single day seeing multiple patients, that's going to be more lucrative.
That was what I was asking because, sometimes young students think, all I got to do is nail one team and I can live off that. I'm not sure I'm hearing you say that that's possible.
That's definitely not the norm. I heard there was, God, that's super rare. There was a chiropractor for the Utah Jazz, but back when Stockton and Karl Malone were there, Stockton and Karl Malone liked this chiro so much. He did have a full-time job with the Jazz, but that's the only instance I'm aware of where a chiropractor, that's all he or she did was take care of a professional sports team.
Well, this has been very helpful because that was one of the reasons. I told you when I called you the other day, I didn't think people that recognized what you have done as far as the sports injury world, because you were one of the first ones out there that got into, quote unquote, the big time. And I wanted kids to know that, coming up, you can have a future in it, and it can be helpful to build your other practice too.
And very important to build your other practice, I would say.
Yeah. But I mean, it can work side by side, I guess.
Yeah. I would think that's probably the chiros that are involved with some professional teams. At least the ones that I know personally, I know that's their existence. They have their personal practice, and that brings up another good point. It depends on how involved you want to get with sports, because it takes time out of the office, takes time away from your family. And so there's a lot of things to juggle and balance.
Yes. Yeah. And especially if they're on the road and things like that.
Yeah, that gets really difficult.
Yeah, that's a hard one to manage. Yeah. So, well, Dr. Monte Hessler, the chiropractor for the Phoenix Suns and the San Francisco Giants, we really appreciate your time today because I know you're busy. And I just wanted to give a perspective to the young students coming out of school about, it can be done, and here's how you start, and this is what you want to get registered in. And so thank you again.
You bet. You bet, Arlen. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
If there's ever any questions along the way, if you field a question from someone, you want to reach out to me, feel free.
Oh, thank you. Well,
you're welcome.
And that's to everybody out there too. You can always, you've got our address and our numbers and stuff. And so if you've got a question, call us and I'll forward it on to Monte and we'll get an answer for you.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.